Hingað komin Eva Joly. Ég ætla að taka fram að þetta viðtal fer fram á ensku. Þó Eva Joly sé norsk og tali frönsku eins og innfædd, þá enska það tungumál sem við eigum sameiginlegt og reyndar það sem áhorfendur skilja best. Það ekki að texta þetta viðtal núna, þetta í beinni útsendingu. Viðtalið verður sýnt textað í endursýningu Silfurs Egils í kvöld og undir eins og það komin text á viðtalið þá setjum við það líka á netið, þannig að fólk getur notið þess sem ekki skilur allt sem fer fram hérna. Welcome to this program, Eva Joly.
Thank you.
It's a great pleasure having you. Just to start with, I would like to ask you to tell me a bit about yourself.
Well, it starts becoming a long story because I'm getting rather old. I grew up in Norway. I left Norway when I was 20. I married a Frenchman. I studied law in France. I became a judge in France and an investigator, investigative magistrate, that we said. And I have led some of Europe's most important economic crime investigations.
This is a strange career because for a foreigner to rise so high in the French within the French system.
Well, the French system does allow that.
Yeah.
Yes, if you work well in school and you take your examination, they have competitive examination for entering professions. So when you are a French national, you go into competition with others for the places. So. But I think I was the only foreign judge in France.
Yes. You were what's it called in France, a juge d'instruction.
Yes.
This is an investigating magistrate, so you have the powers of a judge, but also you were investigating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Meaning that when you have complicated cases like economic crimes, like presentation of false bank statements, for instance, this cannot be sent to court only by a prosecution investigation. You need a leading magistrate. And the idea that an independent magistrate is heading the investigation is that in France people do not trust completely the executive and the police forces. We have some sad stories about police planting proofs and so on.
Yes.
So people do trust the independent magistrate better.
And the cases of course, the case of Elf, the oil company is the most famous. But you also were involved in the case of the politician, football magnate Bernard Tapie, and the case of the Credit Lyonnais.
Yes, they're very important cases. In the Elf case, after 7 years of investigations, 30 persons were convicted. And we were able to prove, my colleagues and I, that the COAs of this company, a very little group of people, had been able to steal 3.5 billion francs during a period of 3 years. And it was very interesting because it showed how the multinational companies works, how they are using the tax havens to enrich themselves. Because the lesson of this is that the most of the stolen money went to these people and their friends. They were telling that it was in the interest of the French industry, but what I proved was that it was in the interest of some of the leaders in the African oil-producing companies and in the interest of French politicians themselves, not the political parties.
And, well, many people were involved. Roland Dumas, the foreign minister, of course.
Yes.
And then there were...
I did prove that his mistress received $15 million from Elf for a flat in which Roland Dumas lived, and that she had also a salary without no service on it. But I have to tell that Roland Dumas was judged in first instance, was acquitted in the appeal court for this in the Elf case.
Yes.
He was later convicted for embezzling for the foundation of Giacometti. So today he is a convicted man for embezzlement.
And there were also threats, of course, in Africa and in Germany. This was
yes,
where the party of Helmut Kohl was implicated.
Yes, because Elf did buy a refinery in Germany called Leuna, and they paid bribes, 256 million francs at that time. And this bribe was divided between the secret services in Germany and in France. And the interesting thing is that we tried to obtain that Germany should make investigations, and they didn't want to do it. They didn't make the investigations, in spite of the proofs that I and Bertossa, the Swiss prosecutor, did send to them.
You had bodyguards during this time. During a 6-year period, I think you had bodyguards, police, constant police protection. Why was that?
I think that this investigation was very threatening to a lot of people. And in France, you do not have a stop button for the investigations. When an independent magistrate to head the investigation, nobody can stop it. So I think that the threat was a way to try to stop the investigations. And I think that a very important part of my job was to secure how long I could go and how not to go too long in order to get something to the courts.
Yes.
Yes.
And so you were threatened?
Yes, I was.
Often?
Well, I received, small coffin in the post. I had a letter on the door of my cabinet saying, giving the list of killed magistrates with my name on it. My flat was broken into, that of my son, and a lot of incidents.
Your phone was tapped?
My phone was tapped, yes, and and that is probably going on still.
You think it's still going on?
Yes.
There was a film actually made with Isabelle Huppert.
Yes.
I think it must be a nice idea to have an Isabelle Huppert playing you.
Yes, that was. She's a great actress.
And you also published a book, and which has been published in English, and I know that you can get it in the bookstores in Reykjavik now. Which is, I think, it's very interesting because you dedicate the book to investigative magistrates, journalists who have died in the fight against financial corruption.
Yes, and this list is growing every day. This week, 2 persons were killed in Nairobi, human rights defenders, in middle of the day, shot down. Not to talk about Bulgarian journalists. I think 4 of them were killed in 2 years. Russian journalists. So this list that I made in 2002, today it's 3 times the length.
Yes.
It is very dangerous to make investigations into economic crimes.
Yes, but now you travel a lot. You work for the Norwegian NORAD, the Norwegian relief organization.
Yes, and with the Norwegian government, we decided 3 years ago that fighting poverty is very important, building institutions. But the most important thing is to make the tax havens more transparent, because we came to understand that you cannot stop the dictators from plundering, but you can hamper them hiding the profit of their crimes.
Yes.
So we did try to put this on the international agenda, and today we hope that things will be changing.
Now you are here in Iceland.
Yes.
And well, this is a small country whose banking system has collapsed, and there seem to be many instances of corruption, even downright crimes. But we are having problems dealing with it.
Yes.
What would you advise us?
First of all, I think it's to understand that you have to start the investigations here in Iceland, and that you can get no international help without proofs established from here. And then it is possible to do it, even if it's 3 big banks. It is absolutely possible for a group of people. I think maybe you need 20 or 30 persons to make this investigation. You should start with looking into their yearly statements to find whether they are sincere, because when the banks are not playing by the rules, you probably find a lot of criminal actions within it. That is common sense and my experience.
Uh-huh.
So you need skilled investigators, because economic crime, if you do not know how to go after the money, if you do not know how the international cooperation works, you have no chance. So you need to set up a team with skilled persons and to deal with this very seriously, because I do believe that if you do not look into what really happened and try to find whether there are undue enrichment of the head of these companies, have they put money aside? Or do they have their own trusts and secrecy companies in tax havens? You have to look for that. And to start, you have to start with the accounts of the bank and look into all the abnormal operations. And this can be done with skilled people and independent experts.
But well, it's almost 6 months since the collapse, and I think
that is not a long time. I mean,
no, it's all right.
It's all right. You can still do it.
Yeah, but it seems that I think people in Iceland they're rather confused. I think most people though would like to know the truth about what happened and see some justice done and recovering some of these
and that
these
is
assets.
so important for the feeling of justice and for your future. If you do not deal with the problem, if people are not to know the truth about what happened really, it will be very difficult for you to have what we call a social contract for the future. I think this is really very fundamental. And the problem is that the banking system is totally international. The economic criminality is totally international, but your investigators are national.
Yes.
And one thing is sure, if there are stolen assets, they are not in Iceland. So you need international cooperation. You need to ask the authorities in Luxembourg, Switzerland, Cayman Island questions. But in order to be able to ask these questions, you have to start here. And the only way is to have this investigation done with the good methods, meaning that you have to make house searches, you have to use all the methods that you use for criminals.
House searches.
Yes, that is the only way to find whether people have secret bank accounts or not.
So it's not enough just to ask them.
You cannot only invite them to come and sit down in a chair and say, Mr. So-and-so, did you misuse your power in office to enrich yourself and your family and your friends?
Yes.
If you ask that question, the answer will be no. So the only way to go forward is to have a starting point, and from the press, looks like you have 10 times the starting point. And this is very important. You do not need to wait for something to happen. I mean, you have to look on the situation of these people. Is it in relation with what they have officially declared as income used during this year?
Yes.
And if it's not, you have a starting point for money laundering.
There seem to be we have fraudulent lending practices, we have losses probably being hidden, we have market manipulation, we have things that maybe could be construed as downright theft. So I think with all the suspicions are there.
Yes. If you have had market manipulation of the manipulation of the value of the share, maybe the bonuses has been paid on a wrong basis, and then there are liability, there are responsibility, and the asset should then be frozen and confiscated.
Yes, but tell me, all these tax havens, they are really the key to all this problem, and you have written a lot about them. I have a very learned article by yourself and Mr. Raymond Baker on the issue of illicit financial flows.
Yes, that is a huge problem. And I have been talking about this for 10 years, trying to pull the attention along with other people to this very important issue. And now the current crisis is due to this parallel system also.
Parallel economic system.
Absolutely. And this is kind of capitalism's Achilles heel.
But it is possible to get information from these tax havens.
It is, because today the pressure upon them is so huge that they have to cooperate. But you will not get the cooperation from any tax haven unless you have the beginning of the information from here. You cannot just phone, the World Bank or somewhere to say, do you have the secret money of Mr. So-and-so? That don't work. You need the proofs from here.
Yes, but now you have even President Obama standing up and saying, we have a house in Cayman Islands where there are 12,000 American companies registered. This is either a big scam or the biggest house in the world.
Yes, I'm very happy that Mr. Obama was elected president, especially because of his position on the tax havens. He has been working with Senator Carl Levin for years on this issue, and they have a bill to be proposed that will forbid shell banks operating from non-cooperative tax havens to have access to the American market. So this is a so-important threat, and things are changing. UBS are now obliged to leave the bank secrecy for their bank, for the U.S. authorities, and to give the names of the American clients that did hide away their money in Switzerland. And so things are changing. So from that point of view, this is a good time for Iceland to try to make investigations. I think they will cooperate.
This seems to be a central issue because all the threads lead to either the Caymans, Tortola, and Luxembourg. Luxembourg is sort of...
Luxembourg, Belgium, Netherlands. There are a lot of tax havens.
Yeah.
Netherlands and Belgium are tax havens for multinational corporations. Liechtenstein is a tax haven for individuals. And Switzerland is for everybody.
For everybody,
Yes.
yeah. And then you have different places like, of course, Cyprus, which was...
Cyprus is specialized for money laundering of oligarch money.
Oligarch money.
Yes.
Well, one of the Icelanders has been based in Cyprus, and he also had a brewery in Russia. That's something that might be...
Yes. So you have a lot of investigative work to do.
Yeah.
But you need people, you need money, you need experts.
Tell me about the difficulties because we had a big fraud case in Iceland, the Bauer case, which sort of collapsed.
Yes. I can tell you... well, I have to tell you first that I have my own experience, 20 years as a judge and an investigative magistrate. And for the Norwegian government, I'm running a network of prosecutors. So I have prosecutors from nearly all over the world. And we all face the same problem. Even if the proofs are very good, even if everything is done by the book, getting to court, it is difficult to get convictions. Because the material is complicated. And a lot of people cannot even calculate a percentage. So when you start giving them very complicated schemas, they get lost. And judges who do not understand, they acquit. Judges that are a little lazy, they do acquit. So it is very important when you prosecute to present to the court very, very strong material in a very simple way. You need technical material to show them the money flows. You have to show them really in a very detailed way. And so you should have 2 screens, one for the court and one for the public, so that the press also can see what happened. And then you have a chance to have a conviction. There is a lot of misunderstanding. Judges feel good when they acquit because they think that the accused is the weak person, but that he should be protected from the bad state. But in reality, when you have economic crimes, the strong persons, they are not the prosecutors. It are the suspected and their lawyers. Very often, when you are carrying out a case, you are alone, or you are maybe 2 or 3. In the Elf case, they had 60 lawyers. 60 lawyers, and we were 3 judges at the end. In the beginning, I was alone. So, very often, and especially in the Anglo-Saxon system, it is very difficult because of the system and because of the way people think. The churches think it's very difficult to have a
It's also
conviction.
a question of the media. If the media don't really...
Yeah, and this is also now a problem all over the world. But for some countries, is that media is very often owned by the suspect, or the media is owned by the arm producers, or powerful industrial interests, and people are interlinked. So the media are manipulating the opinion. And this is why civil society is so important and free press so important. And it's also why I'm so confident that Iceland will be able to clean up this mess. Because you have a very strong civil society and you still have very good television emissions.
But we lived in a society, we perceived ourselves as having no corruption. There were investigations made by Transparency International, and we perceived ourselves having no corruption. But then suddenly we found out that the society was in many ways very corrupt. The financial system was very corrupt. We had really an oligarchy for a while, which turned into a kleptocracy, and there are rumors, strong rumors about politicians getting freebies from bankers, loans to buy stocks and stuff.
I think this is quite parallel to what happened to Norway. Norway also used to think of themselves as being the most honest people on the earth, no corruption. And, well, the truth is very often that your law enforcement system didn't work in that direction, didn't look on this criminality because of a lot of factors. One of the factors is that they have targets to meet, meaning in how many days do you solve a case. And our politimestre, they earn their money also due to how many days they spend on a case.
Yes.
And you know, an economic crime case takes 7 years, takes 5 years, so that makes the statistics go down compared to traffic incidents or small trafficking in drugs. That is easy to solve. So there is a lot of difficulties to overcome.
So the system is made to
Is it not made to deal with economic crimes of leading persons in the society?
No.
And this is undermining democracy. Really.
You think it is?
It is, yes.
It's such a serious...
It is a serious threat to democracy because democracy becomes a kind of theater where you're using nice rhetorics, but behind the scene, the reality is the illicit money flows, and where these illicit money flows serves the very greedy people. And we have so many examples of that. In the IHG case, in the Enron case. In the Enron case, people enriched themselves. Kenneth Lay, Fastow, while the company went down, and they knew it, and they sold their shares, and they earned money. I mean, and your banks, they knew that the Quran was going down, and they recommended to people to lend in foreign currency.
Yes.
This is very shocking.
It is shocking, yes.
It's very shocking.
Yeah.
And, I mean, what you are ending up with is so terrific that you have no other choice than to see it quite clear, to make the investigation of the year 100. You know, this is really a book example of a bubble, of bad banking, of irresponsibility, of what the lack of international regulations has done, and the Icelandic people are going to pay the invoice exactly like the Angolian pay the invoice for the craziness of their leader. And the price is too high, so we need justice. I mean, that is so important, that these people should not get away if there are criminal actions, and only your domestic investigation can show that. And you do not have the right not to do this investigation.
I ask you directly, can you help us? You yourself?
You know, I have a lot of things to do, but I would be very happy if my experience could help Iceland in one way, and I would be very happy to give advices. I could not involve myself full time here because I have other things to do. But I think that I know people that can help you, and that maybe I can give advices on how to start and how to do.
Could you link? You talked about a resource of prosecutors you were involved with. Could you link us with these
Yes,
these
that
people?
I could do. I could link you to resource persons.
Yes. You are going to meet, I think, with the Icelandic prosecutors, the investigative committee, and some government ministers while you are here.
Yes.
And what will you tell them?
Well, the same thing as I tell you. I mean, I will answer their questions.
There's also what we are talking about is that it's easy to if somebody tries to rob a bank from the outside, he gets caught, and it's very easy.
He gets caught, and he gets jailed for 20 years or something.
And if somebody robs a bank from the inside, then we are looking at all sorts of problems.
Yes, that is how it is, and that is how the system is built. And you know, nearly all over the world, the power do not like these investigations, and they want to have control on the judicial system. That is what you see. And when the investigator get close to the power, they are threatened, sometimes they are killed, or the rules are changed so that they shall not have independent investigations anymore.
Yeah.
You see that also in the old countries in Europe, unfortunately. That's what was happening in the UK. The Serious Fraud Office carried out a very huge corruption investigation into British aerospace. That was 1 billion. That was 1 billion pounds on stake. It come too close to them, and they stopped the investigation.
The British government actually stopped the investigation.
Yes, they stopped it.
So we are looking at people who think themselves above the law and who are more powerful than the law.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a bit shocking.
It is shocking.
In a modern Western society.
And today in France, there are some cases that are worrying the power, and they have a prosecution service that is not independent. They had these independent judges, and now our president, Nicolas Sarkozy, has announced that he wants to suppress the independent judges in the name of human rights.
Yes.
Yes. And the pity is that part of the opinion do not understand.
Yes.
Yes, what is going on.
But you have dedicated your life to this.
Yes.
This must be a difficult job, a job that takes up your mind all the time,
But I think also that we are making progress. I think that the public opinion, when they understand, they will not tolerate it anymore. And there is a very important event on the 2nd of April this year, when the G20 will meet and set up the new rules for the financial system.
Yeah.
And our duty, I mean the civil society and the conscience, the politicians having conscience about these problems, is to obtain that they really change the rules. Because, you know, there's a lot of people out there only waiting for the system to start again so that they can still earn billions.
And they can still take their billions away from
the people.
From the people,
yes.
And this is, of course, not just a question of individuals. It's also a question of the multinational companies.
Absolutely. And I started understanding all this when I was 50. Until I became 50, I thought that there were people in the world taking care of important things. And so through my investigations, I discovered that it's not.
Yes.
And that this parallel financial system has been allowed to develop. And that the multinationals are using it, plundering the poor countries. I'm especially thinking about Africa.
Yeah.
And they use illicit transfer pricing, selling the raw material under the market price from Zambia or Kenya, and they are selling it to subsidiaries in tax havens, and then it is sold further from the tax haven. The benefit is taken out in a tax haven where you have no taxes, and then the money is sent to the holding company in the Netherlands where you have no taxes on the dividends. And this means that we are taking out of the developing countries 10 times what we are giving them in assistance.
Yes.
For every dollar we give in assistance, we are taking back $10.
Okay, and this has been your job with NORAD.
Yes.
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 But so, to end this, we are looking at some keywords. Justice
Yes.
is something we need.
Fundamental for a society, for the social contract, for having the feeling of being a nation and living together.
We need truth.
Yes, truth.
And we need trust.
Yes. And the trust depends on the two others.
And we need our money back.
You will only get a little money back because a lot of the money is lost. That is very important to understand because they did buy assets too expensively probably. But you can look for the stolen money if there are any.
Okay. Eva Joly, a pleasure having you on this program. Thank you very much. Eins og ég sagði áðan, þetta viðtal verður, það var ótekstað, hún hérna í beinni útsendingu, það var sýnt tekstað í kvöld í endursýningunni og svo munum við setja það tekstað á netið eins fljótt og við getum. Og svo mæli ég með bókinni, ég veit að það eru nokkur 100 eintök af bók Evu Joly elfmálið í bókabúðum hérna. En þetta sem sagt búið í dag. Takk fyrir að horfa.